Hi, everybody. So, I'm Honza, and I would like to talk to you a bit about extendable Django apps. So, first, just a little background, just a little motivation why I'm actually doing this, and the reason is pretty simple. This is something that we are doing. This is something that's powering our business. We have a CMS which is coincidentally open source. It's called Ella, and we use it to power all different kinds of websites. Some of them are very similar, some of them are very different. And I'd like to share with you some approaches, some patterns, and some techniques that we used to actually make it possible to make Ella and to make our applications so flexible that we can have the same source code actually powering different sites that can be different in many ways. So let's get on with it. Notice that I said extendable apps, not reusable apps, because reusable apps, a lot has been said about reusable apps in Django, and in my experience, it's usually a disaster. There are no silver bullets. There is no 100% reusable app, no solution that would fit all. So this is not about how to make an app that would solve every use case. This is how to make an app so that it can be adapted to serve most of the use cases. So it's the other way around. It's not reusable app, it's extendable app. So I'm hoping that we'll find out that that's a more useful approach. So let's start with the beginning. When you have an app, and since we use it with a CMS, I'm going to be talking mostly about CMS. So what's most important about CMS? It's obviously the content. So what is the content? When you usually start a website with a content website, because why would you start any other? Because content is king. You usually start with some articles, some written text, and it's simple. You create a model for it. You just store in some text and stuff like that. Everything works fine. What if you then get a camera and you want to publish galleries, add pictures to your article? It's still doable, but at this moment you already have two content types that you want to serve and that you want to treat as equal. So how do you do it? And not only galleries. What if you start shooting video, or God forbid, recording podcasts? These are all valid use cases for CMS, and you need to be able to deal with them all. So the first obvious solution: define a model for all your content types. That obviously works, but it's not very dry. It's a don't repeat yourself, because all of these contents will have a title, will be published in some category and stuff like that. So that's not really a good place. It is absolutely extendable if you choose this approach. You can just add any application with any defined models, but it's not very useful actually. So what we decided to use, which is a sort of a controversial thing in Python, is an actual model inheritance. So we have one base model that we ship with the CMS, which is called publishable, which means anything that can be published. And then each app will contribute its own subclass. So for example, if you have a YouTube video, what is it? It's just something that can be published and has a char field that actually contains the YouTube ID and maybe a method to actually render the embed code that you can use in the templates. Note on the bottom, the 3 lines, those are actually important. That's how we access those models, and we modified all our infrastructure, the core of the CMS, to be able to use model inheritance in the proper way. So whenever you ask for a publishable with a given ID, it will actually find out what actually is in that publishable and give you that instance. So it will not give you an instance of a publishable back. It will give you an instance of video. That way you can make sure that the embed code method is there and everything like that. So that's one part. The other part is, if you actually have the content, to actually render it properly. Because you're going to be rendering articles very differently from how you render videos on the front end. So you just need to be ready for it. For us, it's very simple. When we are rendering a page, we just look at what content type we're dealing with and try to look for a specific template for that content type. If we don't find it, let's fall back to a default one. After all, everything is publishable, so I can always render a reasonable representation, even if I don't know what exactly it is. And the same goes if I just want to render not a full page, but just a fragment of the page, something that we call a box. So these couple of lines, along with what was on the previous code slide, enables us to actually create any content type. So if somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, I want a site. It's what you've been doing, except I also want to be able to display interviews in a very specific way." So we say, "Okay, no problem. We'll just create an interview model. It will extend publishable, and we just put on whatever additional fields that we need, whatever additional logic that we need." And from the rendering and storing part, we're safe. We can do pretty much anything. So this is the first way how Ella or any Django app can be actually extendable on the model level. So before we move to anything actually useful, do you have any questions or observations? No, you're right. This was pretty boring stuff, but we needed to get it over with. So the other part of the CMS is it's not just rendering content. That's trivial. That's easy. You don't even need a CMS for that. You can just write the code yourself, and it will probably be even easier to write and maintain. Like you use a generic views from Django or whatever. There is nothing special about it. But CMS usually comes with some sort of tools. For example, tools for listing articles or publishables in our case in a category. So you have some mechanisms there that have very highly defined logic. So this is how you do it. You sort it by time, and you query the database, and you get back the result. But then again, somebody comes and says, "What if I want to replace this one little cog with something else, with something that works a little differently?" Whether it's implementation. For example, we use different implementations of the listing mechanisms on development and on production, because in production we just use Redis to make everything fast. In development, we just use the plain old database. So how do you deal with this? This is also a solved problem. Nothing too interesting, and that is you just use backends. So this is something that's a deeply ingrained part of Django itself. You can in Django itself you can specify different model backend, email backend, session backend, auth backend, and all the different backends. So this is a very useful pattern that actually enables you to plug in your own logic. So you don't have to rely on what's been shipped with the application, as long as the application supports pluggable backends. Know that it's important for the application that wants to support something like this to ship with some reasonable default, so that somebody who's new to the application or who doesn't need any extended functionality is not hampered by this functionality. That it's not an additional burden. It should always just be a possible added benefit. So that's another very trivial part that we do. I promise we'll get to something interesting soon. So backends, revolutionary idea, of course. So any questions or opinions on that one? Is anybody actually still listening to me, or have you already fallen asleep? Okay, somebody's listening. I'll take that. So, something more interesting. What if you actually want to implement a new app? So you have a CMS, and then you want to implement some sort of additional app. For example, tagging. So you have some objects, and you want to be able to assign tags to them. And let's say, for the sake of arguments, and so that all the code will fit on a slide, that you just want to store a list of tags for each model. And again, you have many options. You can create your own models to actually do the many-to-many. So you can have the tag model and have the many-to-many to all the publishables. Sure, that works. But it's not very nice. Because how do you access the tags from the publishable? You can, because publishable doesn't know anything about tagging. So that's why we introduced a very major hack. And that's ABDataField. ABDataField is a database field written for Django that's actually extending JSON field. So it's using the database to store arbitrary data. So any app can come and register, hey, I'm the taggings app, Honza sent me, and I'll be needing this namespace in your ABDataField, and I'll be storing these kinds of values there. And if you ever need that, just wrap it in this class that I'm giving you so that I can add some methods on it. How does it actually look? And this is some of the actual implementation that we use. So we have the tag model. Nothing interesting there, just a name. And then we have a form. We do all this through forms because forms are the most convenient way how to validate stuff and how to clean stuff. So if you, for example, have some sort of scenario where you need to, on a periodic basis, take some data, serialize it into text. Forms are perfect because they can already do that. They have to do that in order to be able to render in an HTML template. Then if you want to be able to retrieve it from the serialization format and clean it and convert it into a Python format, forms are perfect. They already do that. So that's why we are using forms for that. So this form only has one field defined, which is a model multiple choice field referring to our tag model. So we now have the ability to serialize and deserialize a list of tags. So the last part that's missing is actually some container, some class that defines that it uses this given form and has a method just so that I can show something. And then the last line is just telling to some global registry the stuff, hey, I'm the taggings app, Honza sent me, and I want to own the tagging namespace in the field, and this is the class that you should use for it. For serialization, deserialization, and whenever somebody needs to access it. So in any template, in any Django code, you can then do object, assuming that you have a publishable in there or something that has the ABDataField. ABData, which is the ABDataField. .tagging, .taglist, and that's the method that we just defined. So we just basically injected our own code onto an existing model. We didn't just inject the code, we also injected some additional fields, some additional data that we are storing with each of this model. And that's actually something that's pretty cool. So you can now take the models that are defined with a base application, and you can extend them in any way imaginary. So you can add your own methods. For example, in real life, when we have the tag data, the container, we also add a method like add tag, remove tag, get similar objects, and stuff like that. Like it's a very convenient place where to put all the logic related to that application. Whatever the application needs to do with the given model, this is a very good place to put it. It's very well encapsulated. It's completely external, So you can have two different implementations for two different projects, even though it's using the same app. And it's ultimately flexible and extendable. So any questions or opinions on this? Any shouts that it's a terrible hack?
Where do you store data for bugs?
The data? What sort of data?
Like when you post your publishable model, it's some tags, some text, and where do you store those data in, like, if you have normal Postgres database or MySQL, something like this, do you making some new columns for it, or?
So the question was for the microphone, where do I store the actual tagging data, like the association? And we store it inside the JSON field. So each table that can be tagged, so the publishable table would have a field, a column, that stores arbitrary JSON.
Okay, and can you search by this?
No, we cannot search by it, but we don't. But so for searching, we just use Haystack, a full text search. So we actually, when we create the index for Haystack, we just add like a tagging field, which is something else that this application actually provides, which will look into the app data, get the tags, and create it there. So you cannot search it from the database, even though with Postgres 9.3 you could actually have like a proper data field, but for search we use Haystack and Elasticsearch in the backend. Any other questions for the ABDataField? Sorry.
Is it sort of slow to do a full text search when you just want to list something that matches a tag?
Not at all. That's for a full text engine, that's the easiest kind of a query. It's just a filtered query. It doesn't even do a search. So, oh, I'm sorry. The question was whether it's not slow to actually be serving these kinds of queries by a full text engine, and the short answer is just no. The long answer is find me after the talk. But this is something that the full text engines are really well designed for. Anything? Sure.
Can you exclude some models from tagging?
I'm sorry?
If you can exclude some models as well as from tagging. Every model has ABDataField has tagging feature.
When I'm registering this namespace, I can specify for which model this will actually apply to. So I can say only publishables can be tagged, or only photos, or stuff like that. Is that what? Yeah, great. So, any other questions? No? Moving on. So, storing data, that's perfectly nice. But what if I actually want to get the data from the user? How do I do that? And the answer is also simple. The ABData application, the same one that provides the ABDataField. By the way, this application is open source as Django -ABData on GitHub under the Ella user. So it provides a multiform. Multiform, surprisingly enough, is not a form, but it's wrapped around the model form for the given model. Plus, it allows all the different applications that plug something into the model's ABData to plug some sort of some additional fields or entire forms. So this is how it looks in real life. I have the normal model form for some model. Nothing spectacular here. Then, by using a factory function, I could alternatively do the same thing for the video form. Just use model form factory. Alternatively, I could define the form myself. There is no reason to do a factory. I just wanted to show that it can just be one line. I create the multiform, and now in the taggings app, I can actually come in and say, hey, take this multiform and add to it myself. Add to it the tagging form. So the form we saw, this one, will be injected to all the forms that deal with video. So suddenly, all the forms that I have on the site, or more specifically, all the views that use this, this video multiform, will suddenly have a new field, tagging.tags. So again, from within the app, I'm modifying the behavior of some built-in models, video in this case. So I can plug in the data, I can plug in the forms, so I can pretty much do everything. The problem is the querying, which we are using external tools anyway, so we don't care whether the data actually comes from the JSON field or someplace else. So, multiforms, what do you think? Not much, huh?
By this, you are saying you will have first form for your video, and then you add another like fields for your tagging. And when you have like very complex forms, where you have to set up like 5 models, for example, how you do some kind of how to say it, when I choose this one, it will show another part, like some. Like hierarchy or something.
Okay, so something when you have some logic on top of the forms, for example, a wizard or something. So that actually is not affected by this. You would normally have the same code that you would have with the plain old model forms, but suddenly you would just not be working with the model forms, but with the model forms plus the tagging form automatically. So you still have to do the logic, but nothing really changes. Instead of working with forms that just do the video, you're suddenly working with a form that does the video and the tagging automatically somewhere inside. I saw raised hand somewhere over. Oh, Jim. Okay. Oh yeah, sure.
What happens in templates?
So either you. So the question was, what happens in the templates? So there's a couple of options. The first one is you just use the form.stable or sp or something like that, and all the new fields will be.
Full form with the tagging form.
Yes, all the fields from both the model forms and all the edit forms will be rendered. Alternatively, you can still control it, and you can actually specify the added fields by using a dot notation. So you could use tagging.tags. And that's the field that is actually that's actually there. Any other question? I anticipated the questions poorly. So, how do you deal with it with the admin? Because the admin uses model form as well. So, actually pretty simple. And here we actually see the dot notation. You just use ABDataModelAdmin, which is a model admin subclass that's provided by the ABData app. And you just specify the multiform, and then anywhere where you would refer to a field, you can also refer to a field that was supplied by some external app. So the same way as you would render it in template, you can just specify it in the admin. So you can actually use these multiforms and all the added functionality in the admin as well without any additional effort. Make sense? So far, so good. So, what about some other tools? Some that actually does something. For example, if I wanted to implement something like Facebook likes. So there's a problem there. Where do I put the logic so that the users can trigger it? To put it even more bluntly, where do I put the views? How do I define the URLs? So that's another part where we have a convenient plugin that actually does this, and this is actually a part of Ella. It's something that we call custom URLs, and it's a mechanism how I can supplement the existing URL schema of Ella itself. So how does it look in real life? You have your two views, and know that the two views don't get the arguments from the URL. They already get some sort of context that was prepared by Ella. And then you have very much standard URL definitions. But instead of using this in the normal URL schema, you just say core custom rules resolver dot register these patterns. And what Ella does is, when it receives a URL that matches a URL of an object, and it continues with some other stuff, it will just use all these URL patterns, and if it finds some view, it will pass the request, and the context that would normally be passed to a template is instead passed into this view. So you don't have to know what sort of URL schema Ella uses to actually retrieve the objects. You don't even need to know how Ella retrieves the objects. All the magic with the model inheritance and getting the actual object itself and not some abstract base class. You're protected from it. You just deal with context, which has a defined content. The most important one is object. So this is how you put two and two together. You just call the ABData. You have the likes, and you add the like by the current user, or you just get back the count. So very simple. You just write the code that's interesting to you. So custom rules. What do you think? I was hoping to get at least one or two questions for this. No? Whatever. So, to wrap up, remember, with great power comes great responsibility. These are great tools if you know what you're doing, but it's very easy to abuse it and way too much stuff in there. Remember, it's a JSON field. It will be retrieved every time you store something store or retrieve something from the database. So if you store 2 megabytes of data, your network traffic will just kill you, and your DBA will probably come running and gunning for your life. So keep defaults sane. When somebody wants to use your app, they shouldn't have to know that it's extendable, and they shouldn't need to extend it to get it working in the first place. It's only an added benefit. So when you start with the vanilla app, no customizations, it should just work. You shouldn't have to even know that this stuff is extendable. If you need to extend it, you should be able to look it up and do it. But it should be optional. It has to be optional. Think of the developers. When you're using something, for example, when I had the example with the listing handlers, which is the piece of logic that actually does the listings on the page. And I mentioned on production we use Redis. But I don't want to force every template designer that we have to install Redis and make sure that the database is always in sync with Redis.